And what we're going to just do little small things, subcategories, vendor, and what the sales were as our sample data. Now these boxes here is boxes that I'm going to write in terms of reference boxes that we're going to use. And I'll show you how to use those references as we get further along, okay? So the count formula. The count formula is just a basic formula that allows you to count the number of numbers within a range that you select. If there were words within these boxes, the count formula would not count them. If it was blank, the count formula would not count them. It will only count the numbers within this range of cells, okay? And it's really simple, this count formula. You actually type the word count, and the first thing it's going to ask you for is the value. Basically, the value is the range. Value 1, value 2, and so forth. So for this example, we're going to count the number of items within this range of cells. So the formula would look like this. It would be count E3 to E6. Count E3 to E6. And it would return the answer of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty basic. And that's all a count formula does, and that's all it's designed to do. But now there's different variations that go off of the count formula that we're going to get into. So now we're going to talk about account A. Account A, the formula is set up the same exact way, but instead of just count, you actually add the letter A next to it. And what this formula does, this formula counts the number of cells that are not blank. This is a great formula to use when you try to check to make sure you have all the data within your data return. So, for example, if you have a data set here, and you got it, most of the time you get another data set from another person, and they send you that data, and you want to make sure that the data is complete. It's not corrupted, right? You can use this count A formula to count to make sure there's values attached to everything that you see. So the count A formula is set up the exact same way, max for the value. So we're going to do E3 to E6, but this time the count A formula would return the number 3. 1, 2, 3, because this is blank. Okay? Simple. Now, this is the fun part. The next variation off of a count is the count if. The count if is used if you want to count how many of a certain item that you have. So if I wanted to count how many times the word dog showed up in my data set, I wouldn't just use a regular count, I'd have to use a count if. And the way that one is set up, it says count if, and the first thing it's going to ask you for is the range. Then it's going to ask you for the value or the criterion. Okay? Okay? So in this formula, the range that we wanted to count is C3 to C6. C3 to C6. Then the criterion. We could write the word dog or type the word dog by putting it in quotations and typing in the word dog. But whenever you do this, by typing in the actual word, you have to make sure it's the exact spelling as what you're looking for. because even if it's off by one letter or even an extra space within here that's not there, or vice versa, it will not count it. That's very important. Okay? So now it's going to count the word dog anywhere it sees it between C3 and C6. So 1, 2, 3. So the answer it would return would be 3. Now I'm showing it up here on the board, but we're also going to go through it in Excel. I have the Excel spreadsheet brought up, but I want to show this first. Now, remember I talked about these cells as reference cells, okay? If I wanted to make this dynamic, which means I want to be able to change what I'm looking for just by changing one cell instead of actually going into my formula and retyping a different word. Say if I wanted cat, instead of typing it inside my formula, I would type it inside of the cell. So A2 is going to be my reference cell for the subcategory of dog, of cat or dog. So here, if I were to type in dog, but in here, when I ask for my criteria, I'm going to reference cell A2. This means that anything that's inside of A2, this cell, is going to count it, okay? So therefore, if I change my dog to cat, now my formula is going to read C3 to C6, how many times do I find the word cat? In this case, it's only 1. So my answer would be 1, okay? Now, in modeling, that's basically what you do. You have spreadsheets that have a ton of formulas in them, but being able to have a dynamic to where you can change things, you can easily answer questions in meetings and get it back real fast. All right, so I'm gonna speed up a little bit so we can move on to the other pieces.
Sure. So not to speed you up, we had a question asked. I thought it was good to go ahead and put it in. The question that was asked is, are the letters case sensitive? So you would mention, if it was a full word.
The letters inside of Excel are not case sensitive. Excel is actually more of a mathematical analyzation tool. So it's not like Word or PowerPoint or something like that. It's not case sensitive. It doesn't care if it's a lowercase or uppercase. It doesn't care if the reference is in lowercase or uppercase. It doesn't matter. It just reads it as an actual text, basically, regardless of the syntax. All right. Now, we are good with count. We're good with count A. We got a count if. Now, say I wanted to count how many times does the word dog in my subcategory and my vendor blue shows up within a certain data set. So multiple criteria. Not only do I want to find dog, but I only want to count it if it says dog and blue. In order to do that, we would use a count if S. The S, so the S in Excel, multiple formulas use that S on the back of it. This is to extend the criteria. So we're going to use this in the sum function and the average function, but it's using the count function as well. Same formula, but this time we're going to have range 1, criteria 1, range 2, and criteria 2. This time, we're going to look for the vendor. My vendor is in column D, so that's D3 to D6. All right, D3 to D6. And in my reference cell, again, this time I'm going to use the same reference cell, but this time it's cell A4 for my vendor here. And I want to see blue. So, let's count it out. In my reference cell, I'm referencing to find the word cat. So Excel is going to go through this list and go, this is not cat, this is cat, this is not cat, this is not cat, okay? Then it's gonna go to my second criteria, which is D. And look for the word blue. Okay, this is blue, this is blue, this is not blue, this is blue. And then it's gonna say, where do I have two matches? I have a match here, I don't have a match here, but I have a match here, so I'm not gonna count it. I have a match here, so I'm gonna count it. No match, no match, not gonna count. No match, match, I'm still not gonna count because it doesn't match what criteria. So my answer is going to be 1. If I were to change this in my cell to dog, it'll say dog, no, dog, dog, blue, blue, no, blue. So now it's 1, match, match. There's 1. No match. No match. Match. So now 1, 2. So now my answer is 2. So by using the S, I can have it choose multiple criteria going across, and it gives me a different answer than what I'm looking for, when I was asking the first time. This is very useful when you're doing your spreadsheets and you have to find not just one thing, but figure out how many of a certain item is also part of another group as well. So it's always a great one to use. So at this time, I'm going to go to the computer and work it out in actual Excel so you can actually see what it looks like on the computer. So I'm going to stop sharing the video. All right. So I have the same type of sample data, this one just a little bit more data in between, a little more cells. And we're going to walk through the formulas that we just used. Sure. All right. So in the formula, in the count formula, you can see up here, I know it's kind of small, but if you can see up here, it says count and then the first value. But inside of count, I want you to look at this, and this is most important when you're dealing with Excel. Excel is going to ask you the questions that it needs to answer the question. You just need to answer Excel's question so it can answer yours, okay? When I typed in the word count here, the first thing that pops up past the parentheses is the value 1, like we had up on the board. It's asking you what is the first value that you need. And it's going to, you know what piece it's asking you for because it's actually bold out. As you can see, value 1 is bold out more than value 2 is. And especially when I hover over it, it turns blue versus when I hover over the value 2, which is not asking me for yet, it's still in plain text, okay? So it's going to count this row of data. The answer it gave me was 10. That's because it's only counting everything with a number in it. See that? It's not counting these 2 cells. 1, because it's text, and 2, because this one is blank. The count A formula. The count A formula, again, counts any range of cells that are not empty, so are not blank. We only have 1 cell this time that is not blank, so therefore there's 11 cells that have contents in it. Now, the count if formula. This time we said, in the count if formula, I made a reference box, just like we did up on the board. My reference box is shirts. The reference I'm looking for is shirts because I'm looking for the actual warehouse of shirts. So in this formula, I'm asking it to count if you see the word shirts inside this range of cells. And tell me how many times do you find the warehouse of shirts? 3. 1, 2, and 3. If I were to change this to Denver, you see that the number changed. I were to change this to Atlanta, the number changes again. This is the benefit of using a reference box. So you can easily change one cell and get a different answer versus actually going in and changing it inside the formula. Now, another thing that's in here is the count if formula that we can use. This one is a little different. If you wanted to count how many of these cells, these numbers, were actually greater than or less than a certain number, you can do that. But this one, you have to add a little bit extra to the formula. So not only do you have to have your range, but you have to add in the criteria. And since Excel reads things in numbers, you have to use this particular syntax in order to make it read it. You have to put quotations to make it a text, and then less than, greater than, or equal to, whichever one you want, close quotations, and then the ampersand sign. The ampersand sign is used to conjoin two pieces of data, either to conjoin two cells or two words or two numbers, all inside of one cell and make it read it as text, basically. So now, here it's saying, go find within this criteria, everything that's greater than whatever I type inside of K12. The number I typed inside of K12 was 906. There are 8 numbers within this range that are higher than 906. If I was to change this number to 1,000, there are only 3. Again, using these reference cells in order to model things, in order to get quick answers, without me having to click through and count it. Then the count if S, moving along to that. Count if S, this criteria, which is the warehouse, of the warehouse I chose inside of L11. This time was Denver. Then look inside the subcategory and find what I put inside of L12, which was grooming supplies. Wherever you see those two match, count how many you see those matching occurrences. Denver and grooming supplies, you only see once, which is grooming supplies in Denver. If I was to change this to Denver dry dog food, it's still 1 because there's only 1 here. But if I was to ask for Denver toys, you see there's 2 occurrences. Denver toys here and Denver toys here. So in a nutshell, that's a count if S. And again, this is just a count, but I wanted you to, I spent a lot of time on the count function because it all is going to roll into the sum function and the average function, and they're pretty much the same formula, but you're just changing one area of the actual formula, okay? So now we're going to move on, unless there's a question.
There's a question.
Okay.
So the question was to explain the $ within the formula.
Perfect. Okay. Inside this formula, I have a $ here. These $signs actually lock the column or the row in which the formula is actually typed on. This allows me to drag the formula down without losing the range of the cells that I need. So for example, if I was to copy this formula down, it would still say 4 all the way through because it doesn't move the formula. If I was to copy it over, it wouldn't move because the letter is locked down. See where it says $ and then the letter D, the column number? Excuse me. The column letter, it won't move. Now, if I was to take the $signs off, you can use this by a shortcut by pressing F4, by cycling through it, or delete it, either one. And then I was to copy this across, it would be 0 because every time I copied it across and I didn't have it locked down, the range in which I told it to find the information I was looking for moved along with it. Therefore, it cannot find it because it's not looking in the right spot. So the $signs just lock the formula down in terms of locking it in terms of the columns that you need or the row that you need. You put a dollar sign in front of the letter, it locks down the column. If you put a dollar sign in front of the number, it locks down the rows. Okay, good question. All right, moving on to sum. We're going to start here and then move on to the board. The sum formula, I know that we've all used the sum formula before. This allows us to, thank you. This allows us to sum a range of cells to find out a total number of what we have. So if I wanted to know my total number of cells, I would ask Excel to sum this range of cells. So in this cell here, I have a sum, and this time you see I didn't put the dollar signs here because I wanted to show a point, and I'm glad you brought up that question. When you sum here, I had it sum this range of cells, and this sum equals 1278. If you're in a big data set and you just need to know what a few cells are, you can actually highlight the cells you need, and it'll tell you the sum down here. It'll tell you the count of cells, and it'll actually tell you the average as well, just by highlighting it down here. But now, going back to that other question of what the dollar signs are used for, in this particular formula, I do not have the dollar signs copied. So if I was to click and drag this formula down, you would see that my numbers continuously change. This is because you see that the range of cells keep changing. So that's why it's very important to lock down the cells if you're going to use that formula multiple times down your spreadsheet by clicking and dragging or copying and pasting. Okay? Now, the sum if formula. I'm going to go back to the board on this one just so I can show you how it works in terms of what the count formula was. Okay? So let me stop sharing here, and then I will go to the board. All right, back to the board. This time, I'm going to take out the word count and put in the word sum. Now, in the count formula, first thing it asked for was the range and then the criteria. The sum formula does the exact, sorry, sum if. Sum if, it's the one I want, sum if. The sum if formula asks the same exact way. It asks for the range of where to find it. Then it asks, what do you want me to find? And then it asks, what do you want me to sum? So the only thing you're adding to the count if formula is what do you want it to sum in terms of the sum range. So it's going to write, it's going to have sum range here. So sum range. Okay? So now I'm going to use the same range that we did in the count formula. Range C3 to C6, which is our category. The criteria that I want is dog. And this time, I'm asking it the sum range. The sum range that I want is the cells portion of it. Okay? So, I want E3 to E6. So what Excel is going to do, it's going to say, okay, from C3 to C6, he wants me to find cell A2, which is dog. I see it here. I see it here. See it here. Don't see it here. Then he wants me to sum everywhere that I saw the word dog. So it's going to take 500 plus 300 plus 100 to give us 900. Now, the way Excel reads this, while I have some time, I'm going to show it out, but the way Excel reads it, it sees dog, cat, dog, dog, comma, right? This is the way Excel reads it. It asks me for dog, and then it sees, I'm running out of space, so I'm going to write on top of each other. 400, 300, and 100. Okay? This is the way Excel reads it. Then Excel says, okay, this is a go, this is not, this is a go, this is a go, according to the criteria here. So that means if this one was a go, that means this is a go. This is not a go, this is a go, this is a go. And it adds all of them up together to get you the 900. Right? That's what a SUMIF does. And that's the way Excel reads it. Now, we're going to move on to the SUMIF-S. There are some people that uses the SUMIF-S as their primary SUMIF formula because it does the exact same thing, but like I said, with the S, it adds multiple criteria to it. So once I add my S here, I can figure out the sum of my subcategory and my vendor if I see it in both places. The difference is between a SUMIF and a SUMIF-S, Excel likes to be efficient, and it doesn't want you to forget things. So instead of asking for the sum range at the end, it's going to ask for the sum range first. Then it's going to ask for the criteria range. Then the criteria. And then criteria range 2. And then the criteria 2, and so on and so forth. If I had multiple columns, say 10 columns deep, I can have to do that SUMIF formula for all 10 items to find out the rows that have all 10 of the criteria that I'm asking for. Or just using one criteria, whichever one I wanted to use. So that's why people use the SUMIF-S formula, because it's just easier for them to remember to put their sum range first instead of last, like on the SUMIF formula. Okay? So in this case, the sum range that we want is E3 to E6. So E3 to E6. The criteria range is subcategory C3 to C6. The criteria I want, referencing cell A2. The vendor range is D3 to D6. And then the reference cell I want for the vendor is A4. So now, just like they did in the count if S formula, it's going to do the exact same thing. Anytime, where do I find dog? Here, not here, here, and here. Where do I find A4? Blue. Here, here, and here. So now I have a match here, I don't here, I don't here, and I do here. So that means the only two things it's going to sum is the 500 and the 100, just like the count if S formula did. But instead of counting it, it's summing it up. So 500 plus 100 gives you 600. And that's your sum if S formula. 20 minutes? Okay, perfect. All right, so that's your sum if S formula. We're going to go down to the computer. I'm going to do a little bit more on the computer so that you can see how that actually works out again. Hello, everybody. See my whole face. All right, here we go. All right, so like we talked about, the sum is just summing these cells. The sum if formula is saying my range of where can I find what you're asking me for. Then what are you asking me for? Dry dog food. And then once I find it, what do you want me to sum? Which is this range here. Okay? So in my example, I'm looking for dry dog food here, here, and here. And then it's going to sum it all here, here, and here. So my answer is 2759. To do a quick check, you can follow it along yourself. Click on dry dog food. Hold Control to select multiple cells. Dry dog food again, and dry dog food again. And if you look down at this bottom line, you'll see it's 2759 in my sum, just like it is here. Sum if formula. Again, if you wanted to sum a certain range of cells that are greater than a certain number, you can use the same thing that we did before in the count if formula by putting the greater than sign within quotations, the ampersand to conjoin and, right? And then what portion that you want. So you want it greater than 1,000, greater than 500. What do you want to sum? And it'll do that for you. And in the sum if S, just like we did in the count if S, it's multiple criteria here. So it's saying wherever you find Denver within this range, wherever you find toys, which in this range, sum this range. Again, using the reference boxes. Reference boxes are important because if I wanted to see how many toys I sold in shirts, I can just change it. Shirts, we didn't sell any toys. In Atlanta, again, we didn't sell any toys, but in Atlanta, we did sell dog food. Okay? Now, if you followed along with the count if and you followed along with the sum if, average if is the exact same thing. To the point to where literally, instead of summing up the answer you want, it gives you the average. Yes.
I can't see you.
Oh, I can't see.
Yeah, I was gonna try to.
No, it's all right. Still new to this camera switching thing here. Sorry. All right. So where I had sum before, I can put average and it'll do the exact same thing in the exact same syntax, in the exact same format, but instead of giving me the sum, it will give me the average. Using the exact same format we did with the sum formulas. Using the sum if S, it would do the exact same thing, it's just going to give you the average. So, does that make sense, everybody? In the room? I know on camera you can't answer me, but in the room.
But if you're not in the room, you can always type your questions into the chat.
Drew, I have a question.
Sure.
On the average, how does it factor in non-numerical or blank cells? Does it have those as 0?
So in a non-numerical function, so so you're saying if it found a match here, but this number was blank.
Yes.
Or this number was NA or whatever, how does it calculate? If there's an error in this cell, it'll give back an error. But if it's a non-numerical number in terms of a 0, it will count it as 0. If it's blank, it's going to count it as 0 in an average function. Just like in a sum function, it will count it as 0 because it's averaging the occurrences in terms of when it's found in it. It's not averaging the total numbers like a count is. It's averaging the occurrence in which it found it. Okay? We have any other questions on the chat?
Nope, no more questions.
All right, perfect. Now with that, I'm just gonna blow past the average portion because like I said, it's the exact same thing as the sum. And we'll jump into do a quick lookup and you can see all my face again. Keep forgetting to turn it off. All right. So there are many different ways to do lookups. There are V lookups, H lookups, index matches, offsets. There's a bunch of different other ones that we're going to use. We're going to go into the basic one, which is the V lookup that more people are familiar with. A V lookup searches for the first column of a range of data and then returns the contents from any column matching that row. What that means in layman's terms is that whatever column that you start the VLOOKUP on, VLOOKUP counts that as row number 1, which means anything that goes to the right of that subsequently is a different number. So row 1, row 2, row 3, column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5, and so on and so forth. It doesn't matter where you start the VLOOKUP. It will not look left. It will only look right, okay? It will only count right. So in a VLOOKUP, it's going to ask you for the lookup value. Basically, what do you want me to find? Then it's going to ask you, within what box do you want me to find it? Like how many rows, how many columns. Then it's going to ask you for the column index number. So if the first lookup is row 1, where is the data I'm finding? Is it 4 columns over, or is it 6 columns over? Is it 10 columns over? It needs to know that number. And then the range lookup, basically what that means is it's a true or false. Do you want an exact match? Do you want an approximate match? Always put the word false, so because you want an exact match. The approximate match is more used in statistics, in statistical data, and it can throw your whole life off if you don't have it, if you don't put the word false in there, okay? All right, so we're gonna do a quick little lookup for store 1615. So in this formula, we have VLOOKUP, and this the lookup array. Remember I was telling you that every time you start a formula, Excel is going to ask you for everything that it needs to answer your question. It's asking me for the lookup value. That's why it's in bold. The lookup value is what do you want me to find? We're going to use, for now, we're just going to type it in. We're going to want store 1615. If it's a number, it does not have to be in quotations. If it's a text or anything outside of a number, it has to be within quotations in order for Excel to understand what you're looking for, okay? In this case, we're only dealing with numbers, so that's why I'm not using the quotations like I did in the count formulas. Then it's going to ask for the table array. So the far left thing that we're trying to find, I'm sorry, let me say that a better way. What we're looking for has to be the far most left column of what we need, which means if I was looking for 615, I couldn't start my array here. I have to start my array in the column in which what I'm looking for is in, okay? So I'm going to highlight this and everything over to the right of my data set. Now, in this particular instance, I always like to lock down my array by using those dollar signs we talked about earlier, okay? Then the next thing it's going to ask for after my comma is the column index number. We are looking for the cells of class 4. Class 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns to the right. So I'm going to type in the number 5, and comma, and then the word false, because as you can see, true tells me approximate match, false gives me the exact match. So type in the word false and then close parentheses. So now, what that did was Excel went to the first column and said, here's 1615. And then it went over 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And gave me what it found, which was 91. Okay? Some important things about a VLOOKUP. A VLOOKUP reads the first thing it finds down and the first column it finds to the right, which means if there were multiple stores that were 615, it would only return the first 615 that it found, which was 91. So if I was to change my data set to 1615 here, it will not pick this up. It will not pick up 215 like it's, 39 like it's supposed to, because the VLOOKUP only returns back the first thing. So it's always good to use VLOOKUPs only when you have a unique data set. If there's multiple items within the thing that you're looking for, in the column that you're looking for, it will only find the first one. So it's very, very important to have a unique data set, okay? So, for example, if I was to delete this or change it to 9 whatever, see, it will change it and then go back and find the next one, which is 5 spaces over, which is the 39. Okay? So there's more practice items in the down below the Excel spreadsheet. You can practice this yourself some more. And there's also some more practice, I think, inside of the overview that we sent out with the first Snacks and Skills. And also, I encourage you to practice on your own with the VLOOKUPs, the sums, the averages, and the counts. While we're here, we're going to do a quick thing on how it looks to take all those formulas and model with it. So I put an exercise together here on this first one. We have a much larger data set here. This data set goes down about 8,500 rows. But now, from a modeling standpoint, I'm going to use these formulas to show you how you can use them in a modeling situation and still get everything you need. First off, I have reference boxes here that I've highlighted in different colors. And if I wanted to count how many times, I'm using a count if S, which means I'm using multiple criteria in order to get the answer that I want. I want to know how many times within my 8,500 rows is the word dog food, blue buffalo, and total sales. How many times does those 3 things together show up in my data set? Okay? So in my count if S formula, I'm using count if, the first column, which is column G, here, within my subcategories. How many times do I see the word dog food? In column H, my vendor, how many times do I see blue buffalo? And in column I, the measures, how many times do you see total sales? How many times do you see that combination within my 8,500 rows? The answer, 13. It only shows up 13 times. If I was to just do a filter for it, dry dog food, a vendor, blue buffalo. Now imagine having to do this in a meeting when your boss is asking you a question, having to click every filter in order to get him an answer, when you could have just put a formula in and did the exact same thing. And as you can see, My count down here is 13, right? So very useful. Now the sum, I'm using just a regular SUMIF formula here. And this time, I'm asking for the same criteria, but this time I want to know how many cells, how much in cells did I do in dry dog food, Blue Buffalo, for the first quarter. I start off with column M, which is my sum range, right? Then, same just like my count IFS formula was, but now I'm asking for the rest of the criteria, which is the category, the vendor, and the measure. The answer it came up with was $18.5 million. I do the same exercise we just did by looking for dry dog food. So every time you unfilter, your boss is like, I need this answer right away. I need this answer right away. And you're just clicking away trying to filter this to get your answer. Because now once you have this, now you have to go again. And if I look down, 18,486, 18,486. I got that answer a whole lot faster than clicking from piece to piece to piece. And if he wanted to ask me something else, and he's like, oh, well, no, I don't want dry dog food. I want toys. I changed the answer. There's no toys on this list. Oh, what about bowls and feeders? I got a bad list. Give me something else. Grooming supply. No. 5 minutes. Okay. What is else in there? Oh, there's no bowls and feeders in Blue Buffalo. That's my problem. Let me change it to something else. Miss Grooming Supplies, Grooming Supplies. You know what? Daily treats. Sure, Blue Buffalo sells daily treats, right? There we go. Now, I can answer the question by just doing that. So now that we only got 5 minutes left, I'm going to switch to hurry up, quick tips and tricks. I've been using something inside this presentation, and I know you probably noticed, which is this little drop-down box, right? This is called a list box. You can create a list box within your data validation set. So what that means is, and I'm going to show you how to get to it. I'm going to go to my data, the data tab. You go to data validation. And here, it's going to ask, what do you want to happen within that cell? We want a list. Okay? In the list that we want, I'm going to type in this, I'm going to type equal, and then I'm going to highlight a unique set of data, which in this case is, I already have it here, or whatever I want to appear within my list. It doesn't matter how long it is, you can go to the bottom of it, all right? So then when I hit OK, everything within there is now part of my list. This is very good in terms of when you give a data set to somebody or you give a model to somebody so that they can't type in something and say, oh, it's not there, or it is there. You just typed in the wrong syntax, or you add an extra space, or they spelt the name wrong. Whatever it is, they can't do it if you create a list for them to select from. That's a good one. And my other one, which is really nice, that I love, is that whenever you have a big data sheet and you have a bunch of formulas in it, and you do that same report every month, and at the end of the month, your boss comes to you and it's like, hey, we need this report out, just hard code the number, just type it in there. I don't care about your formula, just type it in there so we can get it out, right? And then the next month, you're like, man, I thought I had a formula in there. There must be a hard-coded number in here because it's throwing off all my numbers. If you hold control, I'm gonna go to my little thing here. If you hold control, and this little squiggly key right here is at the top left-hand part of your keyboard, okay? We're gonna use it here. If you press that, hold control, and then press the squiggly, everything that has a formula in it will show you that formula. See that? Everything that has a formula shows you that formula. So now you can quickly look at your sheet and says, where are my formulas? Where are my hard-coded information? Really quick. And he's like, oh, I got to get back. Just hold control, hit squiggly, and it'll go back to its normal format. Just a quick little tips and trick to find hard-coded numbers, okay? And then also last one is just a quick auto sum. Here, you have I have a group of numbers here. If I was in the cell below it, I would just hit Alt and the plus and equal sign on the top right-hand side of your keyboard, and it'll bring up the sum formula for you and give you the number. Just a quick way to use the sum when you need quick data, right? That's my tips and tricks for today. Hope y'all enjoyed the class. Hope you got something out of it. I know some of the stuff may seem basic, but I hope I gave you a better way to use it. So thank you, and I will hand this back over to Lauren.
Okay, so I just wanted to say thank you guys as well. We are planning on doing one Excel session every month. So we will continue to offer one every month. The feedback that we received from the initial survey, the highest interest was on Excel, but there was a lot of interest on some of our company processes. So we will start doing those as well. But we decided let's just keep doing an Excel every month. Everybody seems pretty interested in it. We are targeting June 14th for the next one. So we will send the calendar invite out for that soon. In any case, we are recording these. So I'm also going to send them out. So, you know, if there's something that you need to go back and watch, or maybe you can't make the 14th, that way you guys get it that way too. But as Drew mentioned, we just, you know, really remember that you learn by doing. So even though sometimes it seems overwhelming to try these on your own when you're in your spreadsheets, just do it. Just start learning and doing it. But anyway, thanks everybody for joining. Hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.